Learn to Teach with Your Hands, the podcast where we bring you the confidence, connections, and business understanding you need to teach the crafts you love. I'm Amy Costello. My guest today has been the Executive Director of Northern Clay Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota since 2011. For 12 years prior, she directed the center's artist service, outreach, and education programs like the Clay to Go program, which brings ceramics instruction to local schools and community organizations, the Art at Hand program, which provides accessible art programs for people age 55 and greater, and the Minnesota NICE program. That's the new Institute for Ceramic Education, which provides an alternative educational platform outside the traditional academic routes for emerging makers interested in pursuing a serious career in ceramics. Northern Clay Center advances the ceramic arts for artists, learners, and the community through education, exhibitions, and artist services. Ongoing programs include exhibitions by contemporary, regional, national, and international ceramic artists, as well as historical and architectural ceramics, classes and workshops for children and adults at all skill levels, studio space and grants for artists, and a sales gallery representing many top ceramic artists from the region and elsewhere. Sarah Millfelt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. I want you to follow me around with that one.
So to start, why don't you tell me about a teacher who's had a profound influence on your life?
Oh, gosh. Okay. The one that stands out is my college professor, Randy Johnston. I went to school at University of Wisconsin River Falls, not too far from home. I grew up in Hudson, about 15 minutes away. I met Randy as an undergrad. I took a drawing class because I wanted to get into other studio art classes, and I was really hesitant to take a drawing class, but such was the way if you wanted to actually get anywhere within the art department. And he just happened to be teaching drawing one, and it was amazing. He was so generous of spirit. He was funny. He was irreverent with his students. He was accessible. And at that point, I was a journalism major, and I thought, nope, I gotta do whatever this guy's teaching. I don't care what it is. I gotta be with him. And then I eventually pursued ceramics and photography. Yeah, he's still an incredibly close friend and a mentor. You know, he's part of the whole Warren Mackenzie lineage. So I feel connected to that. Yeah, he's a wonderful, wonderful person.
So tell me how you got involved with Northern Clay Center.
Well, over 20 years ago, I think my last semester of college, some gal ran into the clay studio and said, "Oh, there's a sign here. They're looking for clay camp instructors at Northern Clay Center. Sarah, you're great with kids." I probably was back before I had my own, but if you're great with kids, you should pursue this. And so I probably set it all up over the phone, and then I ended up teaching the clay camp. And I thought it was such a sweet, sweet deal. I can't remember how much I was paid per hour, but you didn't have to fire the kilns. You didn't have to prep the materials. All you did was show up, and this group would just take care of you, and you could work with these kids. And I had a ball. I had an absolute ball that summer. And then this is how old I am. There was another paper copy posting on a bulletin board that they were looking for an outreach and special events assistant. And I thought, I know that place. Yeah, maybe I could do that job. And I mean, it was a newly created position. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I remember when I received the job offer over the phone, I covered the phone and looked at my dad. I still lived at home, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know. He goes, "Take it for a year. Do it for a year and figure it out." And that was 20 years ago. It's his fault. It's because of him. That's it. It's because of Larry, my dad. So
what did you do for the first 12 years there?
Anything and everything I was asked to do, which is truly the case. The position itself was supposed to support a soon-to-be growing outreach program. So the Clay Center had sort of a short history, maybe 5 years of conducting, I guess we would call it outreach. That's the term we used in my generation. There's community engagement is what we need to call it now. And we would go to public schools and conduct some sort of hands-on intensive. And at the time I started, we were maybe doing 3 or 4 major residencies a year. And so I was supposed to come in and help grow this program, manage the, special events and birthday parties when kids would come to the Clay Center for some sort of experience. And I guess special events was one of those tasks, like other tasks as assigned, whatever they deemed a special event, Sarah was there helping. So within my first 2 or 3 weeks, I was recruiting volunteers for the Clay Center's first American Pottery Festival. No idea what the hell I was doing. I remember calling all of the artists to try to get their lists of what they needed for their demonstrations. And I wrote down wheel, 50 pounds of clay. And then the then education director was like, that's not going to fly. You have to call all of these people back again. Like, do you need a soldering wheel? Do you need a Lockerbie? Stonework with iron, stonework with ochre. So I learned quickly because I've made a lot of mistakes. It was a really, really fun time because we had a lot of younger people working. But I can tell you clearly, I remember working more 60, 70-hour weeks than anything. It was insane. Times were insane.
So how did you get the job as the executive director?
Well, eventually the education director went on maternity leave. She didn't come back. I pretty much slid into her position and I guess kind of earned it. And I worked for 13 years total. And by the time Emily Galusha, my predecessor, I worked with her, she announced her pending retirement several months in advance. I don't know, I kind of felt like if I didn't apply, like missed opportunity. I wasn't striving to be in total control over an organization, but after 13 years, I felt it was probably best that I threw my hat into it and applied. And for some reason, they picked me, or I earned it. So it's really bizarre to go from managing really specific programs. I'd done development and artist services and grants, and of course, education and outreach, but then to transition in the same organization to a leadership role is something, I know they write books about that, but you can't even expect what it's going to be like. You go from peer to boss like overnight, and it's weird. And you think all the tools that you have for leadership are just like there in your toolbox, and maybe they are, but you don't even know what tool to grab. So I earned the position. I have to say that I earned the position. I didn't just get it. And
Tell me more about some of those changes that happened over that transition.
Okay. I still remember that time, and it was probably the most difficult professional time of my life. So, but I've only been one place in 20 years. I think I know the organization. I knew the organization, and I think that probably helped an enormous amount because there was no time spent like trying to get up to speed on what are we doing? What's our mission? Why are we doing this? And prior to taking over, my predecessor had hired an outside consultant to conduct this major strategic planning session, like what we're going to do the next 10 years. And so there was a moderate amount of like board and staff buy-in to that new vision and goals. And that was already in place, which was really helpful. But I think trying to understand what your job is, even from a piece of paper, it's like it was incredibly difficult. And there was training, but there wasn't. And it was just a really challenging time because you went from like being invited out for a beer with all of your colleagues to like probably not, like you shouldn't go out for a beer. It's not that the invites stopped. They continued, which made it harder, but you had to really kind of shift because now I was responsible for doing these performance reviews. And it was an incredibly difficult time. And there was quite a bit of staff turnover, but there had been in that small nonprofit for my entire tenure. And I think that's incredibly common. I mean, I talked to my peers and peer organizations, and they all suggest that that's common. There's been very little staff turnover in the last couple of years, so I'm proud of that. But people you hired are like, yeah, I don't want to work for you. I mean, they didn't say it like that, but there's just a different, yeah. All I can tell you is I feel like I just blacked out and I did it for a solid year. And I am so thankful that, I wasn't married at the time, but I was seeing my now husband, but like, I'm glad that survived and that my kids talked to me. And at the time my kids they were like 5 and 7. Like that's really young.
Yeah.
But it was really exciting. It was this really collaborative environment, which it still is at the Clay Center, because it's never felt to me, I mean, responsibility wise, I understand that the weight of the organization is on my shoulders, but it has always been incredibly collaborative. So there's always great ideas and, trying to manage those ideas and manage egos and manage the goals of the Clay Center. It's been a challenge, but rewarding.
What kind of personality traits do you think you need to be a director of an organization like Northern Clay Center?
Well, I think you need to know how to motivate people. I could say something really generic, like you've got to be a good manager, but I think you need to be able to motivate people. And you have to be able to identify your own core professional values before you try to take over an organization, right? So we had done this values assessment and it was a no-brainer. Like my core value professionally is fairness, which gets me into a lot of trouble because I'm the one that's like, that's not fair. But I think having a value of fairness, but understanding situational management and that not every encounter is going to have the same outcome. Humor. You've got to want to have fun and want to laugh, I think, or it's just going to suck. And I'm a middle child. So, I mean, in every sense, and I'm a Taurus. So, bullheaded, but always trying to make everybody get along, right? I mean, that's my job as a middle child. My dad's going to hear this and be like, don't bring your past into it. Don't blame your parents. You got to like please a lot of people and you got to like balance a lot of priorities. But see, what is not part of my bio that you introduced me is I was a manager at McDonald's for 6 years, like all through late high school and college. So I had to balance, getting an art degree and working full time and managing all these kids. So I think that experience obviously helps. Okay, so one final thing. I think when you come into a position or an organization in a leadership role, you have to really look at what the culture of the organization is, because you can't get that in an interview. You got to get that from experience, and you can't just go in and change it. I think you got to learn it and understand it, find what's not working, and then work to change it. But you have to be willing to do that because you don't have all the answers when you come in. I mean, I certainly did not.
Yeah.
So
you were talking about figuring out your professional values. Is it important to figure out other people's and learn how to manage what's important to them?
yes, if you had nothing but time within an organization to every time a new person comes on, do a leadership exercise or a values exercise and put all of your direct reports. I think it's impossible to do with everybody in a room. But if you put all of your direct reports in a room and you do these values, you've got like the best practices. I would love to meet an organization that can do that every time they have a new person coming in. I can't. We created a set of values as a team back in 2011, and I still have them taped on my wall, and I don't know them all. And every once in a while, new staff will be like, what are those? But I'll look up and I'll see one of them. And again, I can't name them off the top of my head. Clearly, I'm not giving them too much attention, but it just was like a reminder that assume the best, right? Assume that everybody has the best in intent and be patient and listen. But I think understanding not necessarily even just the specific values of everybody, but what motivates people is important, but you got to learn that. And I seriously think every time you bring a new person into a team, everybody kind of has to shift. I mean, even on the smallest level, like, oh, she's not the funny one anymore. She's the funny one. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. In my next lifetime, I'm going to make time to do that with every new employee.
What are some things that you find other members of the community misunderstand about what you do as the director?
That is a really, really fun question. We do joke sometimes that I think people think maybe as the director or in leadership positions that we're literally sitting by our phone or sitting by our email waiting to solve a problem or to jump in, or even the assumption is that you're on 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
People, the more you give, the more they expect, right? So I'm on all the time, but I let myself be on all the time. I've never drawn that line until recently. I think in a nonprofit, especially in the arts, I've experienced, and again, this is just in 20 years in one organization, but I think people don't understand the money piece of it, right? We're a nonprofit, right? I hear that, oh, we're a nonprofit. Well, that doesn't mean we have to give away things or give away money when we shouldn't, or the business side of it. It's that's like a tax status. Not making a profit isn't our business model. It's our tax status. It allows us to do an enormous amount of good, but we also can think about earned income as a way to, squirrel some money away to grow or to increase staff hours. And so I think unless you've been solely responsible for a major financial program at an organization or in charge, it's easy to not have to think about that, or the outside world, well, you guys have money, you can do that. Or people misunderstand what the resale value of pots is in Minnesota, which might be very different than selling a pot at the Clay Studio in Philadelphia, right? The buying culture is different. A lot of people don't understand what the climate is of contributed income right now. Well, surely you're making $200,000 a year from donors. What do you mean you don't have an endowment? If I had a nickel for every time somebody assumed that we had this major endowment, it happened yesterday. I could be buying fancy coffees all day long. So.
Are there any specific challenges that you face that you wish people understood better?
No, because it's boo-hoo. I chose this. I pursued this, so. And I don't have to say this. I think the senior leadership at an organization has an incredible amount of pressure on it. There's program managers, there's people that are in charge of all the marketing, there's the business managers. I think there's a ton of work for all of us. I think too, people can forget that you're doing this too because some part of you wants to be in service, right? Sometimes the paycheck's really good. That's great. I love that I've gotten a paycheck for 20 years. Fan-flippin-tastic. But I think we all want to serve in a way. It's kind of like, I think people can assume sometimes that because we have these skills of like business or management or leadership, or you're good with numbers, like, well, that's just where you should be. You should be on the admin side of it. It's like, well, this is what you're good at, Sarah. And it's like, well, I have a BFA. I mean, according to my professor, I made some pretty darn tootin' good work. But yeah, I think we're choosing to be there. But somebody has to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't do what you do. I do like my voice though on the radio, but maybe that'll be my next career.
There you go. Mm-hmm. So the scope of what you guys do at that center is pretty crazy. You have exhibitions, you have tons of classes and workshops, you've got the studio spaces and grants for artists and the sales gallery. So how many people does it take to run all of that?
It has historically taken less than 20 people to run it. Currently, we have 7 full-time and 10 part-time people, but our part-timers are like 32 hours, 24 hours. So they're up there. Our board right now is 17 people. It's been as high as 20 to 21. But, most of the actual physical day-to-day work is done by the staff. Although we had, I wish I knew, I can't remember that number. Was it over like 400 volunteers last year contribute 5,000 hours?
Wow.
For very special events or internships and such. So it takes a lot of unpaid help as well. We talk about the Clay Center like it's a 3-legged stool, maybe a 3-legged pot, a tripod pot. It's like the education program, there's the exhibition program, and then there's the really big foot that's the artist service program, which includes sales gallery, all of the studio facilities that we make available to studio artists, and all of the artist grants, any way that we can pay artists to make a living. It's an incredible number of people now compared to the early days, or even the halfway point from my tenure. But I think it takes a lot of meetings. Senior staff meets every Tuesday. Education staff meets every Thursday. Gallery staff has their own meetings, which I don't know. It's always a day that I'm loud in the kitchen and they're meeting in there. Sorry, guys. So everybody is meeting. So that's really transparent and there's open communication. And we're not trying to create like this big pyramid, but I know if I tell my senior staff this, it's going to trickle down to the right people so that I don't have to be telling every single person. And that's how it used to be, like we didn't have these dynamic, wonderful meetings. And then the whole staff gets together once a month. Sometimes it's just fun and we talk, we have coffee and we catch up on program stuff. Sometimes it's preparing for a major event. So it's a lot of talking.
So what does the board do at Northern Clay Center? What are their responsibilities?
Well, they're responsible for the overarching strategic direction of the Clay Center, right? So when the time comes to have those planning sessions, they have to be intimately involved. They have to know what else is going on in the rest of the world. They are responsible for fundraising in that they're expected to give and they're expected to bring their friends to participate. They are our networks. They are supposed to connect us to new community and resource. So if there's like a potential legal issue, usually the legal person on the board, because every good board's going to have a legal person, he or she's going to connect you to that person with that specialty, right? They're responsible for looking to their networks to help build the board. I've already mentioned 100% of our board give. They're supposed to write a check to the Clay Center every year. They're supposed to buy pots if they can. They're supposed to hire and fire the executive director. I mean, and that's something, the world knows that I'm departing the Clay Center. No, I was not fired. And SECA was hugely successful and they were very proud of the Clay Center and me. This is not instigated by that. A couple people have asked that. Put those rumors to rest. So right now, there's a transition committee, which is comprised of half of our board. And they are, working through the transition to find the next director of the Clay Center. And that's an incredible amount of time and resource and yeah.
So how do you balance the mission and strategy that the board sets with your own vision or the execution part?
Well, the plan is in place, not just because of the board. I mean, there's an incredible amount of staff participation. So I think if you do it right and you work with the right consultant or the right leader on creating a plan, the right parties are involved. So they're drinking the Kool-Aid by the time the plan is printed, right? So they all should know the new mission statement. They probably can't recite it, everybody, but the senior program staff have a very clear list of objectives every year. Senior staff are all intimately involved in the drafting of their budgets, which gets approved by me and tweaked by me and then fully approved by the board. But it's an organization that puts an incredible amount of trust and autonomy in their executive director. This is not a board that is micromanaging the director. And I mean, we've all heard like those faded stories of boards gone rogue or boards taking over in some way. This is an organization that is healthy. The staff has the reputation in the field, and we have an incredible amount of trust and autonomy, which can be really scary, right? like, okay, it's all on us. But we check in monthly with the board. We have finance committee meetings monthly. I mean, the board is intimately involved with not managing the finances, but keeping their finger on the finances, right? We have bankers, we have investors, we have people looking at our numbers to make sure that I'm held accountable, that our business manager is held accountable. But they're not there saying, oh, you should do this. I mean, occasionally there's this brilliant idea, and we work together to execute it. It's a good board, is the long and short. They trust us, they empower us. And, there's certain board meetings throughout the year where I report back. We have program reports every 2 to 3 months to the board, like extensive. So if they read the material, they know exactly what's going on. Oh, we gave out our artist grants this week. Who got them? Oh, the outreach program has increased the numbers that we're working with. So the information is provided to them. I can't lead a horse to water, but there's a lot of transparency. And what's really exciting about our board is there's not necessarily, there's a hierarchy. Obviously, I'm in charge, but they can work directly with the program staff on some initiative. I don't have to be at every meeting. I'm at every board meeting, but they can talk to senior staff. There's a really wonderful rapport. So if you break down those walls, those silos that we keep ourselves in as program people or board versus staff, some really dynamic stuff can happen.
Fundraising is a topic that I'm sure is very misunderstood by people who haven't had to do a lot of it. What are some misconceptions that you think other members of the community might have about fundraising?
Oh my God. I can say this now. If one more person says, I'm going to write a grant, or I wrote a grant. No, you didn't write a grant. You wrote a proposal and then you got a grant. You don't write a grant. You're asking for something. And then if it's funded, it's a grant. And so I think just even with that mentality, well, there's a grant for that. Well, there's a grant for that. It's like, yeah, there probably is a grant for that, but that doesn't mean I have the time. That doesn't mean that this funder is going to say yes to me. There's a lot of factors here, right? And I would never say that my superpower is fundraising. I think maybe managing money and budgets and people is maybe my superpower. And we've done really well at the Clay Center all along. My predecessor was just an amazing businesswoman. And really, I'll give her credit. She set the Clay Center on the right course financially, and I had to uphold that. And I've done a good job. But the fundraising piece is really, it's tricky because you need to know the right people now. Like there's innumerable family foundations that have money now, right? As the corporate dollars are going away, but it doesn't mean that you can get the money. You got to know somebody who knows somebody so you can get the invite to ask or to woo. And those are the things that sometimes you struggle with because you don't have time. But we in Minnesota, where are you from?
I'm in Utah.
You're in Utah. What's the state arts board like there? Does it exist?
It exists. It's definitely nothing like I've heard the Minnesota one is.
Yeah. God, Minnesota's great, man. Minnesota State Arts Board. I give a shout out to their director, Sue Jens, man. She's the magic. She's the unicorn. The State Arts Board has so much money now, which is great. And so there's opportunities for organizations and artists and community partnerships. So we're really lucky with those. It's no easy task to apply for those. My God, the accountability alone. But when you've proven your reputation, you continue to apply. It's really nice to kind of rely on those funds. But the idea that there's a grant for that it's very different now. I think there's a person who wants to give us $500 and then you have about 7 conversations with them and then you get your $500. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff now, but you also have to do the traditional proposals and you've got to meet the requirement. And, every year we send off a proposal to a corporate funder. You just got to say a prayer, right? Because how long is that going to go on? Target Foundation, which has been really, really good to all of us. They're going away and there's been rumors about it for years, like 5 years. And this year they finally said, hey, we're going away in 3 years. You still have to apply. It's not a done deal. Your grant's going to be less. And they were very gentle about it, super communicative. They set up other resources like workshops on fundraising. They've done an incredible amount to soften the blow. But at the end of the day, we just want the money,
Yeah.
So that's $30,000. That's going to go away eventually. Where does that come from? So misconception on the outside. So that goes away. We don't just sell another $30,000 worth of pots. What are the implications on the organization, right? Whose hours nobody's hours are being adjusted right now, but how do you save money? You're going to quit a program, right? We own our building. We're not going to change our rent. We're not going to sell our brand new blow kiln. So, these are things that it's the cause and effect of the fundraising too. I wish more people were wanting to understand. But if I weren't in it, I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to think about it.
Yeah. Just the work that you do specifically, is it mostly fundraising through grants, or do you also do like special events and that kind of
We have
stuff?
an American Pottery Festival, which is our single largest annual fundraiser a year. And so it's primarily through the sale of pottery, right, that we raise funds. So our portion of the sale is 50%, which is common for galleries. And that's an incredible amount of work. That's not just an event now. It's like a lifestyle at the Clay Center. We have program staff dedicated to that. But it takes all hands on deck for this really intense Thursday through Sunday in September. And we have like a maker to table event, which pairs tableware and food. And we've got this amazing chef on our board. And that's like a modest event that's like $125 a ticket. And then a lot of regular, just, proposal writing. State Arts Board gives us a chunk of money. Family foundations, it's like $1,000 here, $5,000 there. You've got programs that are funders that are really interested in outreach, which is great. But the number of foundations and the number of grants available for just general operations has decreased dramatically. I mean, even just in my almost 8 years as director, art for the sake of art is not what's being funded now. And a lot of those longtime funders have gone away or changed their priorities, and they want to know how your programs address, various social issues or educational issues or poverty and health. And that can be difficult for an organization to, not necessarily even get those grants once, but the sustainability. Like, do you create a program to get a grant? Because when that grant goes away, because they just want a startup fund, what do you do with that? I mean, you have to be really, really, really careful. Like, we don't want to create this whole new initiative that, like, how are you going to keep that going? These are the things that keep me up at night. So,
yeah. So tell me, how do you even start thinking about looking for new funds?
Well, I think there's resources depending on what state you're in. I mean, if you're looking for cash from like individual donors, you got to look to your board first. Who do they know? Which family foundations do they know? Who do they know who wants to buy a bunch of pottery? I mean, sometimes it's like finding somebody who'd be willing to host an event, and then maybe they'll turn into a donor. So I think having that social capital on your board, or at least if they don't have it, they know people, that tends to be a struggle too. I think some of us come to the position with those connections already. And I don't have that. I didn't have that going into the Clay Center. I know a lot of people now, but I haven't had that direct connection with people who would be willing to write me a $5,000 check. The Clay Center, excuse me.
Yeah.
But I think there's resources for the state of Minnesota. The Minnesota Council of Foundations has a wonderful list of foundations, and you can go to the public library and access that for free and not have to pay for it. So our program assistant has done some research on local and national grants. And then there's plenty out there. It's just, there's going to be 15 rejections and you're going to get one. There's one year where, gosh, I applied for I was on fire that year. I don't even know what year it was. I applied for 15 new things. 15. And I think I got one grant for $2,000 for outreach. Woo. And we still have that, so many years later, we still get that.
Yeah.
And then that was the first year the Clay Center has ever submitted an application for an NEA grant. And we got it, which was woo! I don't even remember how much it was. It was very small, but I was just over the moon. And then we applied again 2 years later and didn't get it. So I think there's a lot of rejection, which you've got to be good with rejection, good leaders, because you got to be good with rejection. I'm not. I'm not. I take it personally every time. I'm like, oh my God, money didn't come in. It's horrible.
So here's something that I would imagine people imagine when you apply for a grant. It's somebody who just wants to give you a chunk of money, but nobody's just going to give you a chunk of money if they're not getting something in return, even if it's not a physical item. But What is it that motivates people, do you think, to give money to the arts?
I think they want to feel good. They want to feel like they're making a change. They want to feel like maybe their dollars are going to make a difference. I mean, I've talked to funders before who've said, I don't want to fund that program. I want to see my money do something. And I understand that, they want to see it fund an internship for a college student who's getting her BFA. They want to know that one person is really going to benefit. But I think, maybe the larger donors, they want to know that they're supporting something that's meaningful, maybe. And a lot of them, aren't necessarily connected to Clay, but a lot of people like to give to the education side of it now. But then you have fantastic funders, like the Wingate Foundation that is really interested in the artist service side and the exhibition side. And a local foundation, McKnight Foundation, is all about celebrating and integrating Minnesota artists into the community, into the fabric of what we do. They've been very, very generous to us. So,
I heard on an interview you did on the Red Clay Rambler several years ago, you made a comment about how you can get nerdy about fundraising. It seemed like it was something that you enjoy doing.
yeah, I enjoy doing it when it pays off, right? And I get the dollars. I don't, but who likes to do something they're not good at? Or who likes to do something that like ends up unsuccessful? I just like to do things I'm good at. I'm nerdy in that I like to read everything that comes my way. I mean, I don't know everything by any means, but like, anything that Kate Barr shoots out into the world about like the top 8 trends in nonprofit sector, I read all that. Like, I want to know what's going on. Whereas like, I'll go home and my husband will be like, what did you think of that thing today with Trump? And I heard on NPR, and I'm like, I don't know, but I read like the top 8 nonprofit trends and I could tell you all about that. And they're fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd for numbers for sure. Oh my God. Like I said, give me a spreadsheet, give me a budget. Let me just put this over here. Nope. Wait, you forgot about this. I look through people's annual report all the time and I'm like, oh, who's this person? Will they give us money? We'll go. It doesn't happen that often. My husband likes modern dance and I go with him because he's very sweet. He likes modern dance and I like tap and ballet. So we'll be like there and I'll be like looking at the program going, how do they get money from this person? And how do they get money from this person? So it kind of can consume me. It doesn't mean I'm good at it. I'm sorry. Play Center Board is listening. I've done very well. But I kind of like to know that kind of stuff. Like, well, do you know him? Well, how does he know her? Could you get me a meeting? Yeah, I think it's you know what it is? It's not nerdy. I'm like love-hate relationship with fundraising. Love, hate it. So it just depends what time of year and which grant application is due, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. So you announced your retirement recently. You've got like 3 or 4 months left.
Oh, yeah, I do. I want to is this just over the radio?
No, yeah, it's just audio.
Okay, well, so you can see me. You guys can't see me that are hearing me, but can you see the thing, the paper chain?
Oh, there's a paper chain in the background.
I didn't put that up just for you, but this is the best place in the house that I could sit. I'm trying to embrace it with enthusiasm because it's a lot of unknown. And so I have this paper chain that I made at the 6-month mark. And so I'm not really good at tearing the links, but it kind of goes all over the room. I'm departing after 20 plus years of service. And that's really exciting for me. And holy cow, scary. I think we just had just like a bang up NCCA. I think we were like the Clay Center is front and center. We just did we collectively did a spectacular job. And it's like, what better time to exit,
Yeah. So why did you decide to retire?
The public audio version. I've known it was time. I wanted to, like when I became director, I jokingly told a couple board members, I'll stay until the 20-year mark. Yeah, I think I'd like depart right at the 20-year mark, but I did 20 years. Like, what have you done for 20 years? And I don't, I mean that to be disrespectful, but 20 years, like, and it's not just, I haven't been director all but, 7, but, it was 13 years prior to that. Lots of priorities put on the back burner for an organization and for the field. I think what the Clay Center does doesn't just serve the organization and our constituents. I think it's done a lot for the field. And I've been part of that for so long. And there's lots of other things I want to do, and you are supporting artists and creating we have the institution has awarded the McKnight Fellowships. It's $25,000 to 2 Minnesota mid-career artists. We've just changed the lives of 2 people, and you do that year after year and you create opportunity. And we had almost $600,000 that we paid out to artists via teaching fees, exhibition sales gallery sales, grants, you name it. That's a huge amount of money. That's like a little less than a third of our budget is paid out to artists. So my point is like, you're supporting. And then at some point it's like, what, will I make art someday? Like, I don't know, like, could I do this full time? And I'm in a really wonderful position now that my husband has a university job and things are kind of settling down on that front. And I'm giving you a really long answer instead of just being coy. Like, it's time,
Yeah.
Like, it's time. It's time. I've given a lot and I want to like go out on a note where I'm still giving a lot, and I'm like going out on the top, not like, fundraise again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my last day is Halloween.
Yes.
So the collective world can celebrate that by dressing up.
So how do you go about helping to replace yourself and finding somebody to do work that you've been so invested in?
I don't know. I'm sure there's books about that too, right? The healthy way. I have known for a little bit longer than when I announced it that I was leaving. This wasn't just like post NCK. I woke up and what did somebody say? Somebody said it's like a mic drop. You just sang the national anthem and then you just walked off stage and dropped your mic. And I was like, boom, I did. But no, it wasn't like that. Like I worked with the board chair and I drafted a transition plan and gave them a couple options for schedules, down to like, if you do this, then 2 weeks later you do this. And, I want to leave this place in the best possible hands, and I want everybody to be prepared. And, I want all the spreadsheets to be organized. Like, who are our vendors? When did they come in? Who's the contact? So I've done an incredible amount of work prepping for this, like as we were going through NCCA. But I shouldn't be the one to interview. I shouldn't be, that's just weird. It's weird too to not be part of it. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So I've agreed to, if they hire somebody by the first part of October, I will overlap for a month, but technically I'm in the position through October 31st. If it works with the new leadership and they would like some counsel, I guess you'd call it, or insight, I am willing to help out hours here and there, preferably from home in my yoga pants.
Yeah.
And so I love the Clay Center. Like, I want to leave it in the best possible hands. So I'll do whatever they need me to do besides interviewing.
Yeah.
So,
So what's your hope for the future of Northern Clay Center when you're gone?
Well, I hope the culture that I helped to build stays. I think it's an incredibly inclusive place, and I don't just throw that term around. I think that it's an absolute true collaboration. I mean, I'm not saying that I haven't done my fair share of work, but like, there are so many strong and brilliant bodies working there, and smart ideas and passionate people. And every time you think like you're working hard, you turn around and somebody's there longer hours working harder. So I hope that drive to serve continues. I mean, I know it will. I hope the accessibility continues. I mean, my pride and joy and love of that place is the education and the outreach programs. I hope Minnesota Nice continues and draws some of the best candidates in the country, and I hope it becomes harder and harder to like pick who's going to become part of that program. I mean, it's a very nimble and responsive organization, but it takes risks, but they're mindful risks. But when we do it, we do it. We bite it off, we do it whole hog, but with quality. Somebody's not going to manage how I manage and have the same love for programs that I did. It'll be very different. But I think if the culture stays the same and the people who are doing the work are respected, and celebrated, like from the makers to the teachers to the board, like, I think it's important. That's what I think sets us apart from other organizations. I'm going to get all misty-eyed.
Oh, well, I think that's a good place to wrap our interview up. So why don't you tell me where people can learn about the Northern Clay Center and its programs?
Well, www.northernclaycenter.org is this gorgeous website that we operate. So everything's on there. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. You can call any one of us. We actually do like to talk to people on the phone. Yeah, and check us out. Come out for the Pottery Festival, September 6th through 8th, 2019.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for being on my show, Sarah.
Thank you for your time.
If you like this episode, you can visit us on iTunes and give us a rating. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at TWYH Podcast. Teach with Your Hands is produced by Amy Costello. The music is Admin by Poddington Bear. Hear more at soundofpicture.com.